truth is sacred, and your story matters.
Hi, and thank you for joining for the 6th episode of the Her Psychology Podcast, where we will explore the emotional world of women through honesty, clarity, and compassion. Today's episode, Good Guy, is gentle, thoughtful, and deeply relatable for so many women who have ever struggled with the quiet truth in their relationships. We're talking about why women leave the good guy, not the disrespectful man, not the inconsistent man, not the man who hurts them, but the man who everyone else sees as great, the man who checks all the boxes, the man people tell you should feel lucky to have, and yet something inside still feels unsettled. In this episode, we're going to explore that emotional conflict with depth and understanding, because leaving a good guy isn't about selfishness, confusion, or ingratitude. It's often about emotional misalignment. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
My name is Lindsey. Thank you so much for having me. I am 38 years old. I'm from Kentucky. I am a body piercer. I own my own piercing and tattoo studio. It's all female owned and operated. I am recently divorced, and that's what brought me here. I recently started a TikTok platform that turned into something that I wasn't expected for me to share my story. And so that's what brought me here.
I am often glad when things like that happen because you just never know when you're in a situation where someone else is exactly where you are or have already been where you are on your way to. And so when this story was actually sent to me, I only saw the first part of it and I was sold. And I said, I'm going to reach out to her and see if she'd be willing to come on. I didn't know how long it had been since you'd been divorced or anything like that. But the one thing that stood out to me was when you were it may have been a second part that I watched, or you may have been responding to comments. It may be what I watched afterwards. And a lot of people were asking the question, well, if he was a good guy, then why would you divorce him? That doesn't make any sense. You say that, and I think it was something about him not being able to say he loved you or something to that effect. And you were explaining that, and they were like, that's crazy. You should have known. But I kind of disagree because I've had this conversation with my children. So I would love to get your perspective on those comments. And then I'll tell you the perspective when I would talk to my kids about that.
hmm it's funny that I used the good guy comment because I actually got that from another creator, and I did not know what storm I was going to create with just that term because everybody apparently has their own, definition of what a good guy is. So I've steered clear of trying to give my definition on my platform just yet because I do feel like my ex husband is and was a good man. And there is obviously more to that story that he couldn't tell me that he loved me. And there are a lot of assumptions I think that people have. But it's almost comical to me, the people that think it's just that simple. Oh, well, if he couldn't tell you that he loved you, then why, that's a no brainer. Just leave. And it's never that simple.
I agree with that, and that's kind of like what I was going to say when I spoke about my children. So, because of what I went through in my past, which is a history of sexual abuse, it took a long time for me to constantly just be telling people that I love them because of the way that love was introduced to me. And love was introduced to me through manipulation. And so I learned pretty early on in life, like at 4, I learned that just because a person says that they love you does not mean that they do. I would rather a person show me that through their actions and how they love on me, how they treat me, the level of respect that they have for me. I would rather see that in a person to know if that person truly does love me. And so I would have these conversations with my daughters as they got older because I'm not a very affectionate type of person. I'm not a very emotional person. I actually do not deal with people in my emotions at all. And I have to really have known you and got into a full-fledged relationship deep later on down the line. But I'm very honest about that
Mm-hmm.
from the jump, because most men come into relationships with me thinking that I'm some little soft, although I'm a feminine, really girly, and very present person as a woman. I am not a soft person. I just don't have a soft personality. Can I be a soft person? Yes. And so, because of the things that I've gone through, I'm not as trusting of people as well. And so, when I'm speaking to them, what I'm really saying to her is I have to, in some regards, look at people outside of how another person, the good guy, you may perceive that person, to understand that people experience trauma. And so if this is where they say they can meet me at, and I love them and I care about them, then this is where I'm going to meet them at.
Hmm. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand that. They think it's just as simple as somebody being able to say that. And I accepted it for a really long time, but it like we were married for 8 years, which is another story of why we waited 13 years to get married. But I don't even think that he told me that he loved me on our wedding day, but that was just so normal to me because, he showed me that he loved me. But then over the years, as I got older, I was like, what does that really look like? What does it really look like when a man shows you that he loves you? Because he was all I knew. I met him when I was 16. We had a child when I was 18. My father wasn't present. My mom was married, but not until I was a teenager and was driving. So I didn't ever see what it looked like when a man loved a woman. All I knew is that I grew up in a home where everybody said, I love you before they got off the phone, and he didn't. And I convinced myself that I didn't need that I didn't need to hear that somebody loved me until it got to the point where I was like, okay, so what are all the ways so what do you love about me? And he could never even, like, he could not, he was so bad with any type of positive reinforcement. He was bad with compliments. I never got complimented. Um, and so anything positive he struggled with. And a lot of the questions that I've avoided answering is, did he tell the kids that he loved them? Because no, he didn't. He does now. He does now. And my daughter really struggles with that because my daughter, she's 19, and she'll tell you she's not a child of divorce because she was 18 and about to move out when we divorced. So she was like, I wasn't a child of divorce. And so I did grow up with both parents in the household. Because I acclimated to his way, I really wasn't as verbal as my mother was growing up, telling my children that I loved them as often as I probably should have. And it got to the point where it was almost uncomfortable for me to hear somebody say, it still is hard for me to express it and say I love you to people. And I don't always respond. And I acclimated to that, and it became uncomfortable for me. So my daughter has a lot of resentment now hearing him say I love you, because she's like, it took my mom leaving. It took mom leaving for you to do that. Because what's interesting is, when I decided to leave, and I didn't just up and decide to leave one day, I told him, I definitely think that we need to separate. I'm going to look for a place. He had a little bit of time to think about that. And then he wanted to know all the things that he had maybe done wrong. And I just was like, I don't want to tell you what you can fix, because I don't want you to fix anything. I don't want to fix anything, because I don't want you to start telling me you love me now. What am I supposed to do with 21 years of emotional starvation? I don't want to now hear you say I love you. And there was no thoughtfulness or anything. He was so emotionally unavailable. I see that now. And I will never forget one of the first nights that I stayed on my own. He texted me, I love you times. And then he spit this really long number out. And I didn't think anything of it. I was like, okay. The next day he asked me, he says, did you get my message? I said, I did. And he was like, do you know what that number means? And I was like, no. And he said, that's every day for 21 years. And I was like, that you can't sustain this. You couldn't sustain this. This isn't you. It doesn't even look good on you. And I told him for years that I always felt it was me, and he could maybe be like, he could be loving with someone else. It was me. I just felt like we were like we just didn't connect. It was such a disconnect for years.
So, how would you say his reaction was to the moment that you decided, I want out of this? What would you say his reaction was?
He was, I
Was
think
he surprised? Was
he
he like,
was,
oh, I saw this
he,
coming? Okay.
he sort of saw it coming, but I don't think he ever thought I would really do it. And I didn't really think I would do it. And he was so emotionally absent that he was convinced, and so was I, that he would be just fine if I walked out the door. Before I
Mm-hmm.
actually signed a lease, he was like, oh well, life will go on. But then when I was like, okay, so I've signed a lease, I'm moving out on this day, and so we'll have to figure out what life is going to look like for a little while we're separated. And he it hit him like a ton of bricks, all of those emotions. Me leaving has broken him wide open. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
cracked him wide open. From what I hear, he's a totally different human being from the man that I knew. And that's fine, because I want him to be able to be that for someone else, because I had gotten so I didn't realize until I was out on my own. It took me 1 week of being at this house by myself to realize I didn't want to just separate it. We needed to divorce. I was ready to get this out of the way. I didn't want to work on anything with him.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't When he was trying to like then show me like the physical of touch, unless we were going to be intimate, he wasn't fit. I would count the days and then like tell him at the end of like 7 days, like, it's been 7 days since you've touched me. And he would be like, why are you counting that? And then it just piled up. And once I was out, I didn't realize how far checked out I really was, because he worked third shift and I made sure it stayed that way. So I would joke that I was like a married woman with a boyfriend on the weekends, because he was gone. I went to bed by myself. I woke up by
Mm-hmm.
myself. I took care of the kids by myself. He was gone Tuesday through Friday from 4 p.m. till, I mean, he really didn't wake up till 12:30, 1 o'clock the next day. And I liked it that
Mm.
way. And at one point, somebody asked me, so is there trouble in paradise? Are you not happy? And I said, I kind of looked around at everything that we'd built and the time and the picture perfect family. And I was like, I should be happy, but I'm not. And then that's when I knew I had to figure out why am I not happy? And I started looking at everything, and he was like, it's me. It's me. And I was like, no, it's not you. That would be crazy, because you're perfect. And then I was like, no, actually, I think it's you. And now that I'm dating outside of that relationship, I waited until the divorce was final for my daughter's sake. And
Mm-hmm.
experiencing love in a way that I never have from a man is very eye opening to just how emotionally starved I was for years.
I was about to say that. I was about to say that at some point in time, the energy that was between you and you two, the negative energy, because clearly the positive energy had gone long ago. If you're walking around, you're not even being intimate, that's another form of transferring energy. And you're not even doing that. And you're not speaking, you're not having any type of intimate conversations, you don't spend any quality time together. There is already a disconnect that's happening that when a lot of people lose it right there, they don't get it back. Um, it's crazy to me that he didn't know.
I
Like when
and
you when
I take the blame for that. And because here's him and my mother would sort of team up on me. Now, since I was divorced, I actually got formally diagnosed with bipolar and borderline personality disorder.
you,
And finding that out actually explains a whole lot of our relationship. And I put him on a pedestal for a really long time for putting up with me, because I mean, I went undiagnosed for majority of all my life, and my mother always told me like, like quite literally, they would tell me nobody else would ever put up with me the way that he would. And so I was tolerated, nobody else would put up with me. And so I put him on this crazy pedestal for dealing with me. And I don't even think he realizes it, but even in his head, he was on that pedestal because I
Mhm.
created that for him. You're God because you can deal with me. So that alone bypasses you don't have to tell me that you love me and all this stuff and all the things. Cause I would say to let me know when I was ready to leave, how are you showing me that you love me? And that was all the things that a man is supposed to do, even if I'm not there, which is he mows the grass and he goes to work and provides for the family. But I've always worked outside the home too. And I was
Right.
like, all these things you're doing, you tell me that you're doing because you love me. You're going to still have to do those things when I leave.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that's not how I receive love. Now, don't get me wrong. There are things that he did that definitely now I'm like, yeah, at the end there, when I think he started to realize just how much he did love me, I'm going to put that in quotes. I
Mhm.
think it was an attachment. Um, because for years I would ask him, "Do you even like me?" Because I felt like he really just didn't. I never felt like I could be myself. The tattoos, I've been in the industry for 13 years, and I actually just started getting tattoos about 3 years ago. And there was a point that I hit, and I had gotten on medication at this point, and that's when I started to see things a little differently. And I looked at him after a birthday party for our kids where he was kind of talking down about my best friend who is also, and she's now my business partner, but she's also a body piercer, and she had all these tattoos, and I actually thought she looked the best there. I loved that style, and he was talking so down to her. And I let him know then, like, I remember saying to him after that birthday party, like, listen, I want you to know that I have an appointment to get my sleeve started. I can't live my life for you anymore because that's what I've been doing, and that's getting me nowhere. Like, you could leave me tomorrow, and I've been putting off all these things that I want to do that make me happy to make you happy, and I don't even get anything for it. I'm not even getting rewarded with like love and affection and anything.
Do you feel that he was a good man, but not necessarily the right emotional match for you?
Yes.
What makes you say that? I mean, I kind of I hear it in what you're saying, like it's there, but
Hmm.
why are you explain to, because it could be somebody else that is listening trying to identify that. Explain that to us.
So, anybody that has borderline personality disorder, they will relate to this when I say we don't feel things on a level of like anything other than extreme. And that's everything. That's happiness, sadness, anger. We feel that to an extreme. He
Mhm.
was and is, because that's all I know, polar opposite of that, where he was in tune with no feelings, like extremely what I would consider dismissive avoidant to the max. There were times where I would have to show him just how disconnected he was from our daughter because
Mhm.
he was so emotionally unaware. And I blame that on his upbringing. And when we did divorce, and I did say, we have two totally different love languages and we grew up together. He was all I knew, I was all he knew. We didn't know even what we would want or need in a relationship.
How was your family different from his?
So extremely different. He had his own trauma. I had mine. My mother was a single mother. My father was a raging alcoholic and was verbally and emotionally abusive. He was in and out of my life. Whereas his mother, she has some mental health issues where she's still homeless to this day, and he grew up in and out of homeless shelters. She has is undiagnosed schizophrenic, but we know for a fact that she is. And I mean, when his little brother was born, they were living in a homeless shelter at that point.
Mhm.
So it was survival mode for her pretty much his entire life, and that's all he knew.
Mhm.
Now I've been around her, and she she is verbal about, how she expresses love, but was she like that when he grew up? No, I don't think he was. His father was absent. So we had two totally different types of trauma. My mom, she made sure that she went above and beyond where my dad couldn't. I had very loving grandparents. I think the only symbol of love that he had in his life was his grandmother, and no relationships at all. Like, I was quite literally one of his first girlfriends.
Mm.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you guys trauma bonded and then became codependent on each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so easy to stay in that situation because you and he were very familiar, and you
Mm-hmm.
had things that you've gone through and grown through, and
Yeah.
so you kind of understood each other
Mm-hmm.
and had accepted
Yep.
how he was. But it sounds like you guys kind of bonded over your prospective traumas, and then the fact that you met each other so young,
Mm-hmm.
and especially when you weren't developed like intellectually and didn't know any better, you didn't see the red flags of what is not healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
now that you're older, of course, you see it, you think back to it. And I think that all those years of having to deal with that just kind of built up. And then one day you just woke up and was like, no.
Yeah. Really how that happened. And there was so many things that happened over the years. So our daughter's 19. I was 19 actually when I got pregnant with her. We moved in when I was 18 together. And then my son, who is 15, when he was an infant, my daughter was 4 years old when he was born. When he was an infant, he was diagnosed with leukemia, and
Mm,
a very rare type of leukemia. It's called JMML. We had to take him to Cincinnati for a bone marrow transplant. And so that happened when I was 24.
mm,
It was at that point, I think that that's when we should have known that we probably should have parted ways then, because the way he handled that and the way I handled that, I didn't even want to be anywhere near him. I kid you not, I think the reason why we got married was because my mother told me that if we were married, then God would save my son. That made me so angry. And so, for the longest time, I said we would not get married because of that. But
mm,
we separated for about 6 months. Not to mention that after we got my son home, because we were relocated to Cincinnati for 6 months, he bought a motorcycle maybe 3 weeks after we got home, and he had a near fatal motorcycle accident just weeks after we got home, and he spent himself 2 months in a rehab facility. So, and I will never forget this. And again, I think that after 2011, 2012 is when we should have called it quits, because what would have been his last words to me had he left that day and died were just some of the nastiest words you can say to somebody. And so I was like, forgive me if I'm not sympathetic to your current situation, when all of a sudden, then when his life was flashing before his eyes, that's when he wanted to then start being super affectionate and complimentary. And I was like, no, it's always when there's something major that has to happen.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's being performative. It's not even real when they're doing it. It's very much performative manipulation to just draw you back in, and because that's what's always worked.
Mm-hmm.
But what they never count on is that you will get to a breaking point, and that will actually be your breaking point one day. They never count on that. And that is because we have taught and trained them on how to treat us, our behavior, our patterns, how we move about in life, whether or not we're a homebody, whether or not we're extrovert, what makes us cry, how can they push our buttons. And once we do that, they think they have a handle on you until they just do not have a handle. So that's why I asked you, what was his response when you actually told him? And my ex-husband, my response to my ex-husband was kind of similar as well. I had been telling him that I wanted to leave Indiana and that I was going to leave. And I don't think he thought that I was going to leave. And so 2 weeks before I decided to leave, which means I had gotten a job here in Vegas, I had gotten a place, And when I got ready to move, I said in 2 weeks I will be moving to Vegas. And he wound up flying up here with me when I got my apartment keys.
Mm.
Because we were still really good friends. We just weren't together anymore. And we
Mm-hmm.
weren't divorced yet. And that's only because he wasn't signing the papers at that time. So once I moved here, I went ahead and filed for the divorce and did all that. And I wanted to make sure that my son was good too, because we have a child together. He's 15. I also wanted to make sure that he was okay before I actually filed for the divorce and got it. But we had been split up since 2018. And that night when I said I'm moving, it was 2 weeks before I got ready to actually leave. He actually drove me here, moved me here, and then right after he left, he became a different person.
Mm.
I felt like he could not stand my guts because in his mind, he probably never thought I was leaving Indiana.
Yep.
And for a long time, even now, I could not even have a conversation with him because he's just so filled with anger. Every time we talk, it turns into a disagreement. And I don't live my life like that. There's no reason for us to be having a disagreement because our son is 15.
Yeah.
You can just talk to our son.
Right.
So I don't have any conversations with him at all unless I text him and it's about my son. And it's crazy how you can go from loving someone to disliking the very being that they are because you don't even know who
Mm-hmm.
you've been dealing with all
Yeah.
this time. You really thought that it was one person and there's somebody else. Somebody said the other day that who you marry is not who you would divorce. That
Mm.
is the
That is the truth. That is a
that is
good one.
the
That is. Yeah. Even after I filed for divorce, I think he was still in denial because even when the divorce was final, he was still being very condescending and talking to me in a way that I really think he thought that even though the divorce was final, eventually I was going to come to my senses and he would have his family back. And then I started dating in February. And it was at that point that he literally, I went to pick up the kids one day and just like usual, I got out of the car and was going to come in the house because I left him with everything. I left him with the house. We signed papers that said when he signed it, I would get my part of the equity. But I literally just left with the clothes on my back. I had that much guilt about leaving. I was like, I'm going to be the one to leave. You can have everything. And I would go in and, because that was still my home too, it felt like. So I went in to pick up the kids, and he had apparently found out from my daughter that I was dating, and he ran up the stairs and locked himself in the bathroom and told me through the bathroom door that he did not want me in his life anymore and he didn't want anything to do with me. And I was like, well, that's not going to work because we have a 6 and a 7-year-old that we have to communicate about. So
right.
how are you going to manage this? So I fought that for a little bit, and now we really don't. I've kind of, in one of my videos, I talk about parallel parenting because, and I don't think he even realizes it, but this is what we do. We don't have to even see each other because the pickup and drop off, the kids kind of come out, they get in my car, and then I just drop them off. We communicate via an shared Apple calendar on dates with the kids, and we go months without seeing or talking to each other. He can't stand to even hear my voice. He says it's too painful, but
It's crazy how they go from this to this. So I'll say this. I don't believe that if you're a truly good human, decent being, let's use numbers.
mm-hmm,
You are a five scoring the highest, one being the lowest. You start here, and then somebody do something to you, and you go midway. You halfway there. I don't really believe that person was ever here
mm-hmm,
because it's quite hard to go from this to this like
mm-hmm,
this. So
yeah,
I believe that when they went here, they were suppressing.
mm-hmm,
And
yeah,
when they went over here, they didn't have the ability. to be able to suppress. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before whatever it is. I truly do not believe that you go from this to this unless there is an extreme circumstance of a life or death situation.
Mm-hmm.
That only tells me you had it in you, though.
Yeah.
But I just don't believe that when you're in a relationship, you're dating this guy. And by the time y'all break up, he's this guy. He was never
And
this guy.
no, but the good guy just means that he was a present father and he took care of his kids. And I'm sure he tells the world whenever he tells them that I left him that the same year that I decided to leave my job and open up my own studio, he did fund all of that. We paid him back, but he did come out of his own savings and paid for pretty much everything. He painted the whole building and he was really supportive of it. However, he hated everybody in the building. And so he made everybody uncomfortable because he didn't like anything about the industry, but he knew that's where I wanted to be. So he supported me. But did he? Because I was like, you don't even like to go in there. You went in there and you painted it, you funded it, we paid him back, and thanks for painting everything. But that often got through in my face, like, I supported your dreams. And he would say he would go to work and brag about it, but you never bragged about it to me, the person that mattered, ever. So I didn't even know if you liked me half the time.
I think he was living two different lives. One where he knew exactly who he was, and one where you didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because clearly he had a lot of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even need to know what it was to know that he experienced a lot of trauma. He has abandonment issues. He has issues with trust, codependency. He can be a little bit manipulative. He's a gaslighter. He uses a lot of Darvo. I can hear all of that just like in the things that you're saying.
Yeah.
That still does not mean he can't be a good guy, because good is subjective.
Right.
And good is for the benefit of a performance. I say the same thing about my son's father. Everybody probably thinks he's the good guy.
Mm-hmm.
The only person that knows he's not the good guy is me. But the reason why they think he's a good guy is because I allowed that to happen. I was putting the name on the Christmas gifts,
Mm-hmm.
the name on the birthday presents
Yep.
that you weren't even contributing to. And we were together almost 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Enough time to
So
think you know somebody.
enough time to think that you know someone.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
appearance to the family is the way that it is because it's a Summer Walker song. The only thing that's saving you is the heart of a woman.
Mm-hmm.
That song is so true. The
Yeah.
only thing that make a lot of men look good is the fact that women keep their mouths closed.
Mm-hmm. That's absolutely true.
They
Yeah.
care so much about you that they keep their mouths closed, not to disgrace you, but then you would turn right around and go and disgrace them, and still they're silent. But I just got to a point here recently when I started working on this series, because it's about opening up with other women and releasing the predator. And just not in the form of a sexual predator. Those that are abusive, those that come after us because they know that we are easy prey because we're introverted. We're not going to do a whole lot of talking. We try to stay in our feminine energy. We try not to crash out. You have those that'll still try you. So, and I think that just doing this series, when I talk to different women, I'll just be like, a lot of times we contribute to the bad behavior of the men that we are in relationships with, because we're too busy forgiving them so many times over for things that they wouldn't forgive you for one time.
Yeah. He's had a lot of time to reflect. We did have one conversation that stands out to me in February, and it was the last really big conversation that we had. And it was when he found out I was dating. And he takes a lot of responsibility. To me, I don't know if he takes responsibility to other people, but to me, he does take a lot of responsibility for the things he didn't do. And I always tell him I don't hold him in any fault because neither one of us knew any better. But once I left him, I literally started this transformation of my body, my looks, my whole everything changed. And he said to me in February when we talked for a really long time, he said, whatever he's doing for you, it must be just what you needed because you never looked like that when you were married to me. You look the best that you've ever looked. It looks like you're being very well cared for. And I was
That's
like,
it.
yeah. So that was huge for him to say. Again, I think that he does accept his responsibility, but it doesn't make it any easier to interact with me. So he doesn't.
So when people hear you say that you divorced the good guy, what are you really saying?
When I say I divorced the good guy, I mean the man who showed up for his family every day, was involved with his children, but was so emotionally neglected as a child that he then could not give that to me. And I don't hold him at any fault for that. But we spent way too long together. I also take a lot of responsibility for unhealed trauma and undiagnosed issues that he had to deal with on my behalf. And regardless of his shortcomings, he was my best friend for a long time, but just that, my best friend, and
Mm-hmm.
not what I would consider us being romantically in love. I tried to force that, but I eventually he just didn't have it in him emotionally. And I wasn't in a place where I could teach him. How many times on Valentine's Day can you hint around that you actually want something on Valentine's Day to where you just finally give up on that and you convince yourself, I don't need flowers. The first time I received flowers outside of my marriage this year, I rolled my eyes and was like, flowers are stupid. And everybody was like, what's wrong with you? I'd convinced myself for years that I didn't need that kind of stuff. So that's why had convinced myself for years that he was perfect and I was perfect and we had this perfect family. There's nothing wrong with him. And what I told him when I was ready to leave, I said, there are a lot of things that I don't like about you. And I think that neither one of us like each other. And he asked me, what are the things that you don't like about me? And I said, I'm not going to tell you that because you'll focus on that. And there's a woman out there that's going to love all those things.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe when the way she shows you love, you will be able to pour into her, but it's not me. It's not us.
So essentially, what it sounds like what you're saying is that he's a good guy, just not for you.
And I actually I tried to tell him that for years. And I think he thought I was absolutely insane. I remember maybe 3 years before I left, we were folding our clothes together. And I was like, I really think that all of these things, because it was brought up over the years, the things that he couldn't do for me that I needed. I was like, I really feel like if it wasn't me, you would be able to do these things for somebody else. Don't you think you would be happier with somebody else? And he thought I was nuts. He probably still thinks I'm nuts, but I think his person is out there.
I think that when it comes to what you just said in his response to that, he just didn't want to do the work. He can do it. Most men will be in a relationship with you. You will beg them and beg them and beg them for something. They will leave you and go give that very thing to the other person. And I remember talking to my ex sister-in-law one time. We're having a conversation, and we were talking about something that had happened in the past with her husband. I don't even recall what it was. It's not important anyway. I'm just giving the prefix of the conversation. And she said, and I said, well, why don't you just leave? And she was like, well, why would I leave him after I done did all the work to get him to how I want him to be, for him to go be with someone else and be that person? And I just thought that was the craziest thing.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, but to me, I was just like, if he ain't for you, in my mind, if he's not for you, he's just not for you. And that's just what it is. I don't care what I pour into my almost 20-year relationship with my ex-husband. And I poured a lot into that relationship financially, especially as a mother with 5 children. Financially, I really poured into that relationship because for 17 years of our marriage, he didn't even work.
Mm-hmm.
So I did everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we lived with each other, sometimes we didn't, but we were together. And I can recall her saying to me one time, why do you keep doing stuff for somebody who's not doing something for you? And I always looked at it like this. I had children before I met my ex-husband, so the house that I live in and the bills that I pay, I would have to pay those bills independent of anything that he's doing. But he is my son's father, and I'm not going to put him out on the street because he doesn't want to do whatever it is that it is meant for him to do. I have given this relationship a timeline in my mind. All of the conversations that I've had with him, those are the end of those conversations. When my timeline is up, that I've set for myself, because I don't need closure. I don't need you to tell me what's getting ready to happen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
That's all to me that closure really is. You waiting for somebody else to tell you your next move.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to have any more conversations because I've done a whole lot of talking before I got to this point right here. So once I made up in my mind, the timeline in my mind that I gave myself that relationship was over, I called him on the phone one day, August the 5th of 2018. Asked him where he was. Normally at this time, he would be coming from the gym, but he hadn't made it to the house yet. He said, I'm at my mother's house, getting ready to jump in the shower. I'll be to the house in a minute. And I said, just go ahead and stay on over there. Nothing had happened. We hadn't argued. We hadn't fussed. Nothing had happened. Everything was fine. As a matter of fact, we had just got remarried for the 3rd time,
Oh, goodness.
the June before I left him.
Wow.
We had just got remarried on my birthday, right before I left him.
Mm-hmm.
But I just woke up and I just knew
Yeah.
this is not going to work. It hasn't worked in 20 years. Get out
Yeah.
now.
Gotta go. Yeah. You couldn't have paid me to stay at that point.
Yeah,
And, you
once you
know,
wake up and you just know it, it's time to go.
and then a lot of things that people don't realize is that your relationships with other people are going to change too. My mother had no problem sitting and listening to me complain about him for years, to the point where I actually thought it was normal to not like your spouse. I thought that was normal to essentially hate him in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I thought that was normal. And my mother had no problem listening to that and it just being like, oh, well, that's just marriage. And so I just was like going on about my merry little way. Now that I'm happy with someone else, she doesn't want to hear that. Now that someone's actually pouring into me and sees me, something that's crazy to me now is that my ex-husband would, if he thought something was wrong with me, he was going to avoid me until I got over it or I decided I wanted to talk about it. The relationship what I'm in now, he can actually tell when something's wrong really before sometimes I even know what's wrong. And that's a game changer for me. I talked to my mom about that. Me and my mom are actually, we don't really speak right now because I feel like I can't talk to her about anything positive that I have going on. So all relationships sort of changed and shifted after that.
I was about to ask you, how was your relationship with your mother growing
Um,
up?
I, my relationship with my mother growing up was really good.
Okay.
And I would say because of, I always blame myself, but I am really closed off just because of I don't like to get super close to people because of the borderline. I think that's why it was so easy for me to be with my ex-husband is because he did not require any accountability. He had no boundaries. I didn't have to do any emotional work because the relationship I'm in now, it requires a lot of accountability. He's not going to just tolerate me. He's going to hold me accountable for his emotions, my emotions. I mean, we're working together and it's been hard. And so now the relationship with my mom, I even realized was not what it was. One of those things where I just look back and I'm like, oh, that wasn't really a healthy relationship either. I was just being tolerated.
Is your mother
So
still married?
she is.
Okay.
She is.
So do you think is that she has the old mindset that you're breaking up the family by getting a divorce? You've dealt with it this
She
long.
she still holds on to the sentiment that I should have waited for my daughter to graduate and go off to college before leaving. And even my daughter will tell her, no, that would have completely destroyed my first year of college.
Right.
And, what I tried to explain to my mom is that my mom couldn't even do my dad had to leave her when I was like 5 years old. He was abusive, and her story of that is the best thing he ever did for me was leave me, because she wasn't even strong enough to leave an abusive man. So seeing me in this peachy keen relationship with somebody that she knows I hate, but that's normal, because she would also get to sit and complain about her husband. And so my mother, still to this day, and this is really the reason why we are not speaking right now. I mean, if she calls me, I'll answer, but she is still holding on to the idea that I should have waited until my daughter graduated high school in order to leave. And somebody actually commented on one of my videos and said, "Thank God you didn't wait for your daughter to graduate high school, because my parents did that and it affected my college career." Because that's already a big change in itself. I didn't want to throw that at her. And one of the questions my daughter asked me, because I think the thought is that I spent all these years knowing that I was unhappy. I actually didn't know that I was unhappy until I knew that I was unhappy. And in that moment, I was like, oh, I don't want to waste any more of his time or mine. I need to go. Because my daughter's question to me was, why did you stay so long? She feels like she was living this lie the whole time, and that I just knew I was going to just leave one day. I said, Janaea, as I told her that as soon as I realized I was unhappy, I left. The moment I realized it was when I was like, I need to get out.
Where were you and what were you doing when you realized that?
It was in a conversation that I was having with an old friend of mine, and they were like, what's going on? Like, is there trouble in paradise? Like, what's going on? And I was like, why are you asking me that? And then they were like, well, you don't sound like a happily married woman. And I remember sitting back on my back patio on this beautiful fenced in yard of the house that we built and the cars that we had and the business that I had just started. And I was like, I should be happy, right? But maybe this is really not what I actually pictured my life to look like. And I think for years, I would almost fantasize about being by myself with my kids. And I think that's why I liked him being on the shift that he was on so much, is because I didn't even really like being around him. And I just thought that was normal. Thought it was normal.
I've had to live in the house with someone who I was going through a tough time in a relationship with, and we were breaking up, but I still stayed there until I got ready to move. And it's very hard to be in a home with someone who and we didn't even have the type of relationship. Oh my God, I can't stand you. I am just the type of person that when I'm done, I'm just ready to go. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to sit there. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. And the thing about it is, we were young. So it's like, I got to wait till this payday, or I got to wait, whatever the case may have been, until you come up with the money to fully be able to just move. And having to live in a house with someone and walk around and just not even be speaking to them. They looking at you looking at them, you go in the kitchen and cook. You don't know whether or not you're cooking something for them
Mm-hmm.
or they're going to eat out. Because, some people can get real petty. You'll go fix something to eat and then they'll be like, I don't want that, or I ate out. And then when you cook just enough for yourself, they argue about that too. So it becomes just really awkward. So I can imagine, still having to live with someone knowing that you don't like this person, that person does not like you, and yet you're still here. And that's very hard. It's also very draining mentally, because every day that you wake up, oh, I'm about to walk past. You just don't even want them in your energy. You know what I'm saying? And if you're like me, and I don't know if you are, but like when something happens, I'm just ready to be done.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to deal with all the extra stuff. I heard you say that you got up and just left with what you had on your back. And that's why I said, I'm ready. I just want it to be over with. I don't want anything. I just want
Yeah.
you gone.
And initially, we were just going to do a separation. It took me, I remember crying being here by myself for the first weekend, and it being so peaceful. And I was filled with so much guilt because of how much peace I felt being out on my own and knowing what it was potentially going to do to my kids. My three younger ones actually handled it really well, but I I felt so much guilt because I knew what I had to do at that point. I knew that I didn't want to drag it on. And he was adamant about us working it out. He was going to try to fix things. And when I called him over the night I filed for divorce, I actually called him over to sign the papers, and I was going to have them notarized. I had a notary on standby because when I said to myself, I don't want to work things out with you. I don't want you to fix that because I don't even want that from you anymore. I'm ready to end this so that you can move on. Because the longer we stay married, you think that there's hope. And for me, there is none. So it just needs to end now. Because he was like, I've never seen anybody file for divorce this fast. Because it was 1 week after I moved out, I filed for divorce and was like, let's go ahead and get this over so that you can move on and I can move on. I don't want to work things out with you. And it was hard to say to him, but sometimes the truth is just the best part. Like it's the only thing that I didn't want to sugarcoat it for him. Yeah.
I get it. Sometimes the truth is just disrespectful. You're just not gonna like it. You're just not gonna like it. I mean, it doesn't matter who it's coming from. You're just not gonna like it. Was there a point anywhere where you felt like staying with him would be choosing him over your own emotional well-being long before you actually left him, and that's why you stayed?
Yes. Yep.
Could you elaborate?
So I actually left at one point, but before we got married in 2013 for the exact same reasons. Exact same reasons. And it took me maybe 4 months, and I was filled with so much regret because I felt like that was as good as it was going to get for me because of all of the things that I thought about myself, that no other man was going to love me. Oh, my kids deserve to have their parents together. All of these things that, again, I'd put him on this pedestal and glorified him, that eventually it was his way or no way. My emotions, really, I had to just get over it or leave him. And at that point, that's why this was really so hard for me, because I was like, am I going to get out on my own and just be filled with this intense regret that I did the last time? So I had to really be sure this time. And it took me having to emotionally detach from him completely, which was really hard for him.
Would you say that you had any particular stories that you told yourself to justify staying in the relationship outside of the children?
I would say so. I would go to work, of course. My business partner now, she worked with me for the same amount of years together, 12 years before we opened our own business. And so her and another coworker of mine, they sat for years and listened to me complain and listened to me complain. And it was clear to them that I wasn't happy. And my best friend would look at me and say, if you're not happy, why do you stay? And I would be like, that's just how marriage is. Like, he doesn't cheat on me, he doesn't do this, like, it doesn't get any better than that. That was my story, was it does not get any better than him. He was the end all to be all. And now I can't even really figure out why, other than he was there, but he wasn't there emotionally. My daughter even tells me now that it's going to be hard for her to see him in another relationship with someone and be able to show them any type of verbal or physical affection because he never could with me and definitely couldn't with them. But he does now, and it's hard for her to hear it from him.
Sometimes just like with other changes that happen in our lives, we kind of rationalize things. And I think that rationalization at times, it protects our mind so that we don't have to formulate or form our thinking that we have to go with this new change that's about to happen. You get what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? And
Yeah.
so we start telling ourselves, well, yeah, I think I should probably just do this because you need to do it, but you're scared to get out there. The fear is holding you from actually jumping out there to try to get it done because just with anything, people they struggle with change throughout life. And so I know a lot of times when we're in relationships, we stay in those relationships not only because it's going to change your life, it's going to change the person that you were just with life. No more holidays together if you're not getting along. You're not able to go to their family's house if you go there. They're not able to come to your family's house. How are we going to do Christmas? The children are going to have to be with Christmas with you this year. Is Thanksgiving me this year? All those changes are things that we actually think about, and they furthermore make you feel like I just don't want to separate my family. This is too hard. And a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times that's why we stay. And we say a lot of the times we're doing this for the children because we really think that, but in actuality, we're not doing that for the children. You often find that children want us to break up more than we want to break up because they tired of us. You
Yeah.
know, they tired of hearing y'all disagreeing or seeing you guys walk in the house not getting along. You sleeping on the couch, he sleeping in the guest bedroom. Like the children tired too. It's throwing their energy off. When they get up in the morning, they can't concentrate on the way to school. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? That the grades are slipping. I remember when me and my we first split up and I moved here because we had been split up since 2018, but I moved to Vegas in 2021. And I remember when I moved here, my son, his grades started slipping in school. And he had always been a straight A student. Like right before we left Indiana, somebody came and put a placard in the yard saying that he was an honor roll, AB honor roll student, one of his teachers. And so I kept asking his father, do you think he needs to go to therapy? He was like, he don't need no therapy. And I hated that about trying to co-parent with someone who don't think the other twos outside of me and him
Mm-hmm.
are going to be conducive for our child. And so you have to start thinking, i.e., leave this relationship because this is not good. You have to start thinking for the children without including your partner because you know that based on how they're feeling, you're not going to get good responses out of them in trying to co-parent. So I can see how the parallel parenting is happening because I myself have gone through that. And a lot of times we stay in those relationships because these are all the things that that we don't want to deal with. Do you feel that an imagined long-term future with him died the day that you realized that you were done, or do you feel like the imagining that happened long before that?
I think that the future died when I realized that I could live without him because I think I had
Okay.
convinced myself that I couldn't live without him. That even though I was not happy all the time and that I think I was trying to make that work way more than he was, even to the point where, I got on medication. I got on an antidepressant because I wanted to not feel the way that I was feeling all the time. And there was always a problem with how I was feeling, but never, he was never able to look in the mirror. He was so emotionally unintelligent. It was painful at times because there were concepts that he couldn't even grasp. Our oldest son, who's about to be 15, I thought he would take it differently. And he's high functioning autistic. And again, my ex husband just really has such trouble understanding anything that's has to do with neurodiversity. He doesn't understand somebody that has ADHD. He also, my son also has ADHD. I can relate to him on so many levels. And so I understand him. I also wanted to understand him on a deeper level. everything was surface level with my ex-husband. And when we actually separated, I had a very long conversation with my teenager, and he said he completely understood why I left. And I said, how would you feel if we divorced? Because at the point in time we were just separated. And he was like, I don't think you should go back. He completely understood it. Because my ex-husband, while a good person, was just still very negative and unenjoyable to be around at times with us. But to everybody else, he was great. That's why a lot of people, nobody was married to him but me.
Right.
That's what I have to remind people in any situation is like, so and so can tell you, oh, but he does this, but you're not married to him. What you see is not what I see. He's actually really negative. Nobody knew, not even some of my closest friends knew that we didn't tell each other that we loved each other. I had so many people that would message me when they found out we had split and would say, oh my gosh, you all were my favorite couple. And I would hit them with, did you know he hadn't told me that he loved me in over 10 years? And they would be like, oh, yeah, because everything looks good in a picture. And I often told him that I felt like he only wanted to fight for the relationship because he considered us a power couple. We had this story. We'd been together since we were high school sweethearts, and we had this big story to tell. But truth be told, I was checked out long, long before I left because it was so easy for me to leave. It actually, it took me 4 or 5 days to realize I hadn't talked to him in 4 or 5 days. And I was like, oh, I haven't talked to him in 4 days. That's how much I missed him.
Do you think he was a narcissist?
He's questioned that, and I've questioned that. I think that he had narcissistic tendencies, but watching him try to improve himself emotionally now and some of the changes that he's making, I can't diagnose him with narcissistic, personality disorder. I think he was extremely emotionally neglected as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And he was given he could not even set his own boundaries, to the point where, he would tell me he never felt like I put him first. And that's not a lie. I didn't. He couldn't ask for what he needed. So he was oftentimes sitting around on the back burner and would complain about it sometimes, but
Mm-hmm.
he never got it to the point where he's like, hey, I'm unhappy. Can we work on this? And I probably wasn't going to, because I wasn't happy anyway.
Right.
I tried to take us on a trip one time and thought that would fix things. But then it just made it even more obvious how much it just needed to end.
Do you think that, well, I guess I'll ask this. Is he in therapy?
He is.
Okay.
He is
Do you
now.
think, I couldn't remember if you said that, so I had to think about my
Yeah,
next
we haven't
question.
talked about that.
Do you think that the therapy is helping him, or do you think also that the therapy will continue to help him in the long run if he continues to go? Because it sounds like to me, you healed him. And I want to tell you a story before you answer this question. When back in 2012, no, I'll take that back, 2002, I was diagnosed with breast cancer at 28. And the day I got my diagnosis, I went home and I sat on my couch and I was watching Touched by an Angel with Della Reese. I don't know if you remember this show.
Mm-hmm.
And the moral of the story was a lady on there. She wanted to have a baby. And she thought that she was a blessing to the baby because she found the baby in some bushes. They let her take the baby home and care for the baby. And then the mother of that child came back for that baby and got off of drugs. And she won her baby back through the court case. And she just cried and cried and cried. And so Della Reese came as the angel and told her that sometimes you think that you are a blessing, that somebody is a blessing to you, but actually you are a blessing to somebody. So the moral of the story is the child needed you more than you needed it. And that's how you were able to find that child and nurture that child and care for that child until that mother got her feet. And I said all that to say that you guys had nothing in common. You didn't even think he liked you. But outside of the relationship and the children, something happened. He had to be broken as well to be put back together again. And it sounds like he's getting himself put back together. I asked you if you felt like he was a narcissist because you didn't speak of him having any type of empathy. And a lot of times when you go through what he went through as a child, you do lack empathy. I think that we all have traits of narcissism.
Mm-hmm.
Some people's traits are higher than others, but you definitely have to be diagnosed to be diagnosed with NPD.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I asked you that question. I was just trying to hear some of the things that you kind of went through because they are similar to what other women may be going through. And I think it's important to ask these type of questions. I think that my ex-husband for certain was a narcissist. And a lot of people would not have known that side of him that I knew because I didn't really speak on it because I'm this type of person. And it's kind of sad that I'm like this, but because of the trauma that I've gone through, in my mind, I can turn you off. He was beneficial to what I needed him for in the home because he didn't work. So he
Mm-hmm.
cooked, clean up. He would, pick up the kids from school and he was doing, so the roles was just reversed.
Yeah.
I was just being that person, the caretaker, the provider and all of that. And he was just doing the home thing. And that's where he benefited me. But as far as like who he was as a person, I'm not a person that's just easily broken. And so with everything that I've gone through, I just learned to tune him out. And it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of sad that I say that I cared about him, very much so. Loved him as a person. It's not that I didn't love him or anything like that. It's just that at some point in the relationship, it just clicked to me that he was a brick wall.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as you have somebody that you cannot talk to, they know everything. You're never going to be able to tell them anything. You're in constant competition with them. I remember one time we had a conversation and he told me, I said, why when I ask you to do something, you don't just do what I'm asking you to do. And I mean, this is exactly how I said. I said, because when you ask me to do something, I just do it. You don't ever have to keep coming to me to ask me to do anything. He said, well, sometimes I just don't like the fact that you're asking me, so I just do it whenever I feel like it. So,
That's a
so they know exactly what they be doing.
yeah. Oh, they do. Yeah, they do. For me, it felt like because what you're describing to me is like you build this life with this person and over time it's like you're just another family member here in this household for me to care for, and that is fine. It was like we were best friends doing life together,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nothing really romantic about it. A lot of questions about our sex life in my comments, and people will probably assume that we weren't intimate. That was never an area of concern. As a matter of fact, we will both admit that that was the only place that we did connect.
Mm.
But it was, and then we would go about our way. I mean, there was no intimacy beforehand or afterwards. It was just that's where we would connect, and then everything would go back to the way that it was. It was like two people just doing life together. So it is easy to treat them just like another, almost like another child. Is how it felt, and I asked him for years, "Do you even like me?" For one, he wouldn't tell me that he liked me. For two, I really think that I was asking myself, "Do I even like him?" Because now that I know what I know and looking back, I didn't. I actually didn't like anything about him, and I hate that for him. But like you said, I tell him he considers it a waste of time, and I don't consider it a waste of our time because he wouldn't be who he is and where he's at without me and the experiences that we had together. I think you get somebody to a certain point, and then after I had made that big life change of what I will tell a lot of women who are afraid to leave is you've got to trust yourself. And for me, that year, I left a 12-year relationship with my boss, who I was very close with. And that was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. That was harder than leaving my marriage, as a
Mm,
matter of fact. And when I left that, and I saw how beautiful it was on the outside of that, that's when I knew to trust, that I could trust myself,
mhm.
that I can do hard things and I can make big changes and actually reap really beautiful benefits. And so that's when I was like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and trust that I know what I want and that this isn't what I want anymore. And so you've got to really have some heavy trust in yourself that you can handle all the grief that comes with it, the grief, the guilt.
Mhm.
It's not easy.
No, it's not easy. I want to ask you, do you have any closing remarks for the people today?
I think that was a good closing remark, is to trust yourself. I have so many women in my inbox that are like, how do you deal with the grief and the guilt? You just have to trust that everything will be okay. I knew that it would rock the relationship that I had with my daughter. Me and my daughter were very close.
Mm,
And it wasn't necessarily the divorce, I think, that hurt her as much as it was she was in her senior year and she didn't want to move with me. So she stayed there with him, and it felt like an abandonment to her, and she knew I chose that anyway. And I've told her, since we just went shopping together, everything's fine now, because I always would harp on my husband at the time to tell him, like, the relationship that we build with these kids emotionally is what's going to keep you connected with them as adults. And he
mhm.
was not building that relationship. And so I told her, because I gave her space. She was very upset and angry with me. I gave her space. And when we reconnected, I told her, I knew it would hurt you, but I had to trust the foundation that I had built with the relationship that I had with you, that it could withstand this temporary pain, that it would just be temporary. And she sees it, she understands it now.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
The person that I'm dating, I knew previously from a past relationship. And I tell him all the time, like, I've learned through this divorce that I don't need male validation. So if
Mhm.
this doesn't work out, that will probably be the last time that I entertain any type of relationship, because I'm perfectly fine by myself. I spend a lot of time getting to know myself, and it's peaceful here.
I love it. I wouldn't trade it for the world. I absolutely love it. I do have an affirmation. I'm going to give that affirmation, then I'll give my closing remarks, and then I will give some books that I give at the end of each show so that people can read those books to go along with the episode. My affirmation is, I'm allowed to outgrow what no longer nourishes my soul. I honor my truth even when it is quiet. I choose alignment over gift, expansion over fear, and myself over expectations. I deserve emotional connection, not just goodness. And I trust myself to walk toward the life that reflects who I truly am. These are my closing remarks. Leaving a good guy does not make you ungrateful, confused, or emotionally unstable. It makes you honest. Sometimes what hurts you the most is not the breakup, it's the judgment that comes when those others who do not understand your inner world. And that's okay. They weren't meant to live your emotional experience. You were. A relationship can be healthy on the surface and still unfulfilling at the core. A partner can be kind and still not be your emotional match. A man can be good and still not be the man for you. Your decision to choose yourself is not a betrayal, it's a return to your identity, your voice, your emotional truth, your sense of self, and a return to the parts of you that you knew long before you admitted to it. Here are the books for this episode: Attached by Amir Levine and Rachel Heller, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, Nidra Glover Twab, Women Who Run with Wolves, Clarissa Pinkola Estes, The Dance of Intimacy, Harriet Lerner, and Too Good to Leave, but Too Bad to Stay, Mira Kirschenbaum. If you don't have any more words for me tonight, thank you so much, Lindsey of the Valley, for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I am Theredhead, signing off.